We know how to rebrand without having to go crazy. We don't have to recarve a mountain or anything. We're going to be doing it not in the most expensive. We're going to start changing the stationery as it comes due and lots of things like that. We're not going to be doing things like have been done in the past when they change the name of forts that shouldn't have been changed. Those names of the forts should not have been changed, at least for the most part. And as you know, many of them have been changed back already. At the request of the communities, every one of those communities said, we want our name back, like Fort Bragg as an example. The people in that community wanted that name back. They refused to call it anything else but Fort Bragg. So we're not going to be spending very much money on that. Yes,
Sir, when you spoke with the Europeans and Zelensky earlier this week, did you preview this for them, and did you say what security guarantees they might be involved in?
This is nothing to do with anybody but the United States of America, the people of America. This is who I talked to about changing a name. This is a very important change because it's an attitude, and we know how to win. We've been winning, and we're going to win like you've never seen. Wait till these factories start to open up that are being built all over the country. You're going to see things happen in this country that nobody expects. We have over $17 trillion in investment coming into the country. We never did anything even remotely close to that. No other country has either, by the way. So you're going to see things that are pretty amazing. But it's really about winning.
And what about the security guarantees aspect of that with Ukraine, sir?
Well, we'll work that out. We'll help them. Look, we want to save a lot of lives, so we'll do something with that. I think people expect that. We'll help them. Europe will be first in by far, and they want to be first, and they want to see it end. Europe wants to see it end, and it'll end. It'll end all of a sudden. It's going to come together. You watch. Yeah, did you want something? Right
here.
Yeah, behind you, please. Yes.
Yes, sir. You haven't been shy about taking bold, decisive, offensive action to protect American values. Strikes in Iran, the strikes this past Tuesday on the positively ID'd Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists. Is that going to be a critical function of the Department of War moving forward?
It depends on the individual instance, you know. We don't want drugs coming in from Venezuela or anybody else or any place else, and we'll be tough on that. We don't want human trafficking. We don't want to see people coming in where they open their prisons from all over the world and they dump their prisoners into our country, which is what they did in the Biden administration, where they took insane asylums and places that held people that were seriously mentally ill, mentally incompetent, mentally dangerous, and they dumped those people into our country, and we're trying to get them out now. What they've done, what the Democrats and Biden have done to this country will go down in infamy. What they have done to our country, and especially that, you know, they created the worst inflation we've ever had. That's nothing compared to what they did with the people in our country right now. And we're getting them out, and it's not easy when you have the liberal judges destroying our country. But we've won them all. We've won it all, ultimately won it all. Hard process. It should be easier. We know who it is. We know exactly who we're looking for. We had 11,000 murderers dropped into our country. We've gotten a lot of them out. Or in some cases, they're so dangerous, we were afraid to get them out because they'd come back in. But for the last 120 days, 0 people came in. Can you imagine? This is me speaking, but these are figures developed by, they say, a pretty liberal group of people. They admit that 0 people came into our country. Think of that. A year ago, it was millions of people were coming in, millions. They were coming in. You could look at them and you could say, big trouble. And that's what we have in our country. But we're getting them out, and despite that, we're doing really well. Yeah, please, Brian.
Comment on the recruitment levels across the military branches.
Well, the recruitment's the most exciting thing. So when I was campaigning for the office, numbers were coming out that the recruitment numbers, generally, you can speak to it better than anybody, the recruitment into the military, all branches of the military, and police and firemen and everything else. Anything having to do with like a public service, the numbers were horrible, record-setting bad. And now they're record-setting good. We're setting every record every month for recruitment. We're packed in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. My beautiful I love Space Command. I love Space. I see Space Command, but Space Force has been. We've got a waiting list of people wanting to go in. A year ago, especially a year and a half ago, when I took the lead in the polls, which was very early, it really helped with the recruiting. And when I won from November 5th on, it's been amazing. And over the last 4 or 5 months, we're just packed. It was very hard to get police officers. Now the departments are loaded up. Everyone wants to be a policeman or a woman. So it's been a great thing. General, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. As you said, serving our nation is an incredible gift that we give, and the reward on that gift pays back exponentially year over year. And I think the young people of America are seeing the importance of service, and whether it's in any of our armed services or in local police, fire, or rescue, service is an important thing that I personally encourage, and I know everyone else in government service sees that same reward.
And Pete, on recruitment, what do you think?
I was down at Fort Benning, the newly properly renamed Fort Benning, yesterday, watching Army basic training, and they're so full they can't barely handle the throughput.
This is Defense Secretary
It is
Pete
truly
Hegseth
historic
speaking right
across
now.
all the services, as you said. It's been a surge into the, I was going to say the Defense Department, but I will say the War Department. And that you might almost call it a vibe shift, an attitude shift, a feeling that the country is back, that service is back. And there were military families last year, Mr. President, that said, I don't know if I can recommend, I wrote a book on this. I don't know if I can recommend service to my son or daughter, given what's been done to our military. You heard it over and over and over again. And I hear from those same military families right now, sir, and they're saying, I recommend to my kids that they go into this department, this Pentagon, under this commander-in-chief, who they know you'll have their back and they want to serve. So it is historic, and it's the biggest reflection of how motivated Americans are by your leadership, sir.
Really, it's nothing more than spirit, love for the country. I guess the esprit de corps, as they say, you have more of that than we've had maybe ever, frankly. But to see a turn over a period of less than a year, I would say, but to see a turn, nobody wanted to go into the military. Now everybody wants to go into the military. Jennifer, you want to?
Yeah, there's some new reporting on North Korea and this Navy SEAL incident in 2019. Can you say if the administration has engaged with North Korea on that incident since it happened recently?
Yeah.
And then can you share some recollections?
I don't know anything about it, no. I'd have to, I could look, but I know nothing about it.
Can you confirm that it happened?
I don't know anything about it. I'm hearing it now for the first time.
Okay, great. And then on the Hyundai incident in Georgia with the arrest of some workers, construction workers at the plant, have you heard any feedback from Hyundai?
I just heard about that a little while before the news conference, and I would say that they were illegal aliens, and ICE was just doing its job. But I know nothing about the instance. It happened a little while ago. Okay.
There has been some pushback on that, though, from South Korea already, and of course, they pledged to invest $150 billion in the U.S. and they were just here, last week. Are you concerned?
Well, and they
at all?
have the right to sell cars and things in our country. It's
Yeah.
not like a one-sided deal.
Are you concerned at all about, your immigration agenda potentially clashing with these economic goals?
Well, we want to get along with other countries, and we want to have a great, stable workforce. And we had, as I understand it, a lot of illegal aliens, some not the best of people, but we had a lot of illegal aliens working there. So, look, they're doing their job. That's what they have to do. These are people that came through with Biden. They came through illegally. They came into our country, so we have to do our job.
Mr. President, the now Department of War has been involved in the crime cleanup in D.C. You've tasked Congress with proposing and passing a crime bill. What are some things that you would really like to see codified in that crime bill?
Well, I think one of the things is the cashless bail. It's killing it. When that came out, the first time, that's when you saw the real big crime start to happen. Cashless bail, what a disaster that is. You murder somebody, you don't have to put up bail, and you go out in the street and you murder somebody else. That's what's happened. It happens so often. And that's one of the things. And other of the things you're reading about, is a standard, but just a certain toughness. I have to say, one of the elements of fascination for people over the last period of time has been what's happened to D.C. So we've gone from one of the most dangerous cities in our country to what they call a safe city. It's a totally safe city. In fact, I set up dinner in Washington, D.C. next week I wouldn't have done that, to be honest. I would have had an obligation not to do it before I came into office, or even at the very beginning when things were so corrupt and so dangerous out on the streets. So Washington, D.C. has had virtually no crime. We even have a mayor that's admitting to it, and she's a, liberal Democrat, in all fairness. She's a person that hasn't gotten exactly along with Republicans over the years. And she said she's never seen anything like it. So Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. We have virtually no crime. It's gone from the most unsafe city in the United States, almost, just about, to one of the safest cities, maybe the safest city in the United States. That's a tremendous compliment to our military, what we did. The National Guard's done a fantastic job. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can I ask about Florida real quick? Florida House Speaker Daniel Perez was at the White House yesterday as part of a leadership summit.
Yes.
And we understand you met with him separately. Mr. President, what did you two talk about? And also, did you explore him running for Florida Attorney General?
I didn't. We didn't talk about that, but he's done a fantastic job. He's respected all over the country, really. He's a leader, and he's done just a fantastic job. We didn't discuss anything having to do with his future. I'm sure he'd be very good at that.
My second question, Alligator Alcatraz, sticking with Florida, a major ruling appeals court blocked a federal judge's order to close it, and it can remain open for now. Your reaction?
I think they've done a fantastic job in building it, the governor and everybody else that's been involved. It's an incredible facility. It's housing people for usually a very short period of time before they get brought back to their countries. As you know, we focus on criminals before we focus on anybody else, and we're taking thousands and thousands of criminals out every month out of our country, some of them murderers. And I think Florida's done a great job by building it, and whether it's Alligator Alcatraz or anything else you want to call it, I was there. I visited with the governor, with other people. I guess Nikki was there. Tom Homan's been there a lot. A lot of people have been there. It's an amazing facility for what it is. It's not a hotel. It's not supposed to be a hotel, but they've done a great job with it, and I'm very happy with the judge's decision.
You also mentioned Venezuela. I want to ask one more follow-up question on that. On the U.S. strike note tied to a Venezuelan drug cartel, the Maduro regime is pushing back today. In fact, they say the U.S. seeks regime change through military threat. Your reaction to those words, and also, would you like to see regime change in Venezuela? Well,
we're not talking about that, but we are talking about the fact that you had an election which was a very strange election, to put it mildly. I'm being very nice when I say that. I can only say that billions of dollars of drugs are pouring into our country from Venezuela. The prisons of Venezuela have been opened up to our country. They've taken their prisoners, the worst prisoners, murderers, Tren de Aragua. The worst prisoners that you can ever imagine are now happily living in the United States of America. Now, many of them we've gotten out. It's not easy to get them out because of the liberal system that we're working with in many cases, not in all cases. But millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars of drugs are pouring out of Venezuela and other countries. Look, China, what they're doing with fentanyl is a terrible thing. It comes through Canada and it comes through Mexico, but a lot of it's coming through Venezuela. Venezuela's been a very bad actor, and we understand that. And when you look at that boat, you see the bags of whatever it is there. Those bags those bags represent hundreds of thousands of dead people in the United States. That's what they represent. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, your reaction to the jobs report this morning?
Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We have our great people here, so I'll talk that in a minute. Let's talk about this. We'll give a couple of because these two people want to get to work on the Department of War. So let's keep them first. Yeah?
Mr. President, the DOJ is reportedly considering a ban on transgender people owning guns after the Minneapolis shooting. Do you think they should...
Are we talking in the military?
In general.
Okay, I thought you were talking about in the military.
I've
I'll refer to that then differently. Because it's not a military question, I'll be able to pass on that very nicely unless you'd like to talk about it. No, Pete doesn't want any part of that question. Yes, please.
Mr. President, who do you blame for losing India to China? In your post earlier today in the morning, you did put that out.
I don't think we have. I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff. I get along very well with Modi, as you know. He's great. He was here a couple of months ago. In fact, we went to the Rose Garden, and the grass was so soaking wet. It was such a terrible place to have a news conference. I said, well, let's use a beautiful white stone emblematic of the White House, okay? And it's been very well received. But we had a news conference on the grass. That was my last news conference I had on the grass because everybody sunk in. You probably sunk in. Every reporter out there, they ruined their shoes. We made that change. It's been a really well-received change. Yeah, please, go ahead.
On Venezuela, you've sent F-35s down to Puerto Rico. You've sent naval vessels into the Caribbean. You're concerned about drugs being illegally sent into the United States. How do you describe this buildup, this situation?
Well, I just think it's strong. We're strong on drugs. We don't want drugs killing our people. I believe we lost 300,000. You know, they always say 95, 100,000. I believe they've been saying that for 20 years. I believe we lost 300,000 people last year. I know families that lost their son. Those families will never be the same. I know a family lost a daughter, a beautiful daughter. In fact, it was like she took something that she thought was like a minor deal, and it turned out to be riddled out with fentanyl, the size of the head of a pin, and you're dead. And no, we're stopping the drugs. We're going to save a lot of people. Look, whether it's 100,000, but it's not. It's 350,000 people died last year from drugs. And we're not going to let that happen to this country. Think of that. Think if you're in a war and you lose 300,000. We'll lose 600,000 in the, pretty much between Gettysburg and all of that, the Civil War, we lost, 600,000. So we're losing half of that every year to drugs. We're not going to do it. We're not going to allow it to happen. You think of the wars. If we lost 600,000 people in a war, but we lose that every 2 years, more than that. So it's 300 to 350,000 people. And when I see boats coming in, like loaded up the other day with all sorts of drugs, probably fentanyl mostly, but all sorts of drugs, and we're going to take them out. And if people want to have fun going on the high seas or the low seas, they're going to be in trouble. I will tell you, boat traffic is substantially down in the area that happened. They called it the runway. It's a runway to the United States. And boat traffic is very substantially down on the runway. You can imagine why. I think anybody that saw that is going to say, I'll take a pass. I don't even know about fishermen. They may say, I'm not getting on the boat. I'm not going to take a chance.
What happens if Venezuela flies jets over U.S. naval vessels again?
Well, I would say they're going to be in trouble. We'll let them know about that. We heard that happen, but it wasn't really over, not like they described. But I would say, General, if they do that, you have a choice of doing anything you want, okay? If they fly in a dangerous position, I would say that you can, you or your captains can make the decision as to what they want to do, all right?
Sure. Sir,
How close did they get,
we have
Mr.
one more.
President? You said they didn't go over.
Say it?
How close did they get? You said the planes did not.
Well, I
go
don't want to
over.
talk about that, but if they do put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shut down. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to now cover the G20, and I'm going to let these people go back to the Department of War and figure out how to maintain peace.